This story invites you into the mythic world of Perseus, a hero shaped by prophecy, danger, and divine intervention. Throughout the tale, you'll witness his rise from a hidden child to a fearless warrior destined to confront legendary monsters. Each chapter uncovers a new challenge that tests his courage, wit, and strength as he journeys across ancient lands. You will follow Perseus as he faces powerful kings, deceptive gods, and creatures born from the darkest corners of myth. From the fateful encounter with Medusa to daring rescues and confrontations with sea serpents, the story reveals the struggles and triumphs that forged his legacy. Prepare for a vivid adventure filled with emotion, tension, and heroic determination. As the chapters unfold, you'll uncover hidden motives, divine rivalries, and the heavy burden of destiny. Every step Perseus takes draws him deeper into a web of ancient forces that seek to guide or destroy him. This tale promises action, drama, and reflection as you witness the making of a true hero in a world shaped by gods and mortals alike. Welcome to my channel. Before we start, it's a good idea to get into bed and relax. I would also like to ask you to subscribe to my channel, like it, and write in the comments where you are from and what time it is. Thank you. Have a nice viewing. Perseus's story began long before he drew his first breath, woven into a prophecy that haunted the kingdom of Argos. King Perseus, desperate for an heir, sought divine insight, yet the oracle delivered only terror. His daughter Danae would bear a son destined to end his life. Fear twisted Perseus's heart, turning a father's love into a ruler's paranoia. To defy fate, Perseus imprisoned Danae in a bronze chamber sealed from the world. No visitor, no sunlight, and no hope were meant to reach her. But destiny is not restrained by walls, and neither are the gods who shape it. Zeus, moved by Danae's sorrow, entered her chamber as a shower of golden light, and from that divine visit, Perseus was conceived. When Perseus was born, Danae held him with a mixture of fear and wonder, knowing the child was marked by forces beyond mortal control. Perseus, horrified by the truth, refused to spill divine blood but sought another solution. He sealed Danae and her infant in a wooden chest and cast them into the vast, merciless sea, leaving their survival to fate. Waves battered the chest for days, but mother and child clung to hope. The sea, though wild, carried them safely to the island of Seriphos, where a humble fisherman named Dictys discovered the drifting box. His compassion saved them both, offering refuge, shelter, and a quiet life far from the shadows of Argos. Years passed, and Perseus grew into a spirited young man, strong and quick-minded. Dictys taught him the ways of the sea and the values of humility and courage. But the island's peace was fragile. King Polydex, brother of Dictys, watched Danae with covetous eyes, seeing her presence not as a blessing but a prize he longed to claim. Danae rejected Polydex's advances, and Perseus stood firmly by her side. The king's frustration hardened into resentment, and he began seeking ways to rid himself of the young man who dared defy him. Yet Polydex was cunning. He knew brute force would fail. Instead, he devised a scheme draped in celebration and deceit. Polydex announced his intention to wed a noble woman and demanded every man on the island bring him a gift. Perseus, possessing nothing of value, felt humiliation rising like a tide. When the king mocked him publicly, Perseus, fiery with pride, boasted he would bring something greater than any gift, the severed head of the Gorgon Medusa. The crowd gasped, for Medusa was no ordinary creature. Once a maiden cursed by Athena, she had become a monster whose gaze turned all living beings to stone. Polydex smiled, hearing exactly what he wanted. With feigned concern, he accepted Perseus's vow, sealing the young hero's fate with a trap carved from ego and desperation. Realization struck Perseus too late, yet he refused to retreat. The danger was immense, but his resolve burned brighter than his fear. That night, he prayed to the gods for strength, unsure if any would answer. In the still darkness, the world felt heavy, yet destiny had already begun unfolding threads far beyond his understanding. At dawn, Perseus prepared to leave the island. Danae embraced him tightly, begging him to abandon his vow, but he could not break a promise witnessed by gods and men. Dictys offered what little provisions he had, sorrow clouding his eyes. With courage as his only weapon, Perseus set forth, unaware that divine aid was already on its way. Perseus wandered across rocky shores and quiet valleys, unsure where to begin his impossible quest. Each step felt heavier than the last, yet he pushed forward, determined to prove his worth. As doubts swirled around him, a sudden shimmer of light appeared on the path ahead. Two radiant figures descended from the sky, their presence filling the air with divine power. Hermes, swift messenger of the gods, stood before him with an easy smile, while Athena appeared resolute and stern, her armor gleaming like forged wisdom. Perseus fell to his knees, overwhelmed by their arrival. Hermes urged him to rise, saying the gods had heard his courage and chosen to guide him. Athena's gaze conveyed both challenge and support. Athena explained that no mortal could face Medusa alone, for her curse was born of divine wrath. But with the proper tools and knowledge, Perseus might defy fate. She presented him with a polished bronze shield, its surface gleaming like a captured sunrise. "Do not look at Medusa directly," she warned. "Use this reflection to strike your blow." Hermes stepped forward next, offering winged sandals that glowed with faint celestial energy. "These will carry you faster than fear," he said with playful pride. He then placed in Perseus's hands a curved blade, the sickle-shaped harp, forged to pierce even monstrous flesh. Its weight felt strange yet perfectly balanced, as though destined for his grip. Perseus thanked the gods, bowing deeply. But Athena wasn't finished. She told him to seek the Grey Eye, three ancient sisters who shared a single eye. They alone knew the location of the Gorgon's lair, yet the sisters guarded their knowledge fiercely, and gaining their guidance would require cunning, not force. Perseus nodded, accepting the challenge. With Hermes' sandals strapped securely to his feet, Perseus lifted into the air for the first time. The sensation was startling, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. Winds rushed past him, carrying him over forests, cliffs, and roaring seas. Below, the world unfolded like a vast mosaic of green, gold, and shadow. After hours of travel, he reached a desolate region blanketed in mist. Here the Grey dwelled, hidden from the world they despised. The air felt heavy, muffled, as though sound itself feared to travel. Perseus landed silently and approached a cluster of jagged stones, hearing raspy whispers echoing through the fog. The Grey huddled together like shadows stitched into reality. Their skin was pale and wrinkled, their movements slow and uncertain without their shared eye. Perseus watched as one sister passed the lone gleaming orb to another, each grip trembling with age and frustration. He knew he must act quickly and carefully. When the passing moment came, Perseus darted forward with Hermes' speed, snatching the eye from their frail hands. A chorus of shrieks pierced the stillness. Blind and furious, the sisters clawed at the air, demanding its return. Perseus held firm, promising to give it back only if they revealed the Gorgon's hidden dwelling. The Grey hissed, arguing among themselves, but they knew he held the upper hand. Reluctantly, they shared the truth. Medusa's lair lay far west, beyond the edge of mortal lands, where night and stone intertwine. There, in a cavern shaped by ancient curses, the Gorgon sisters slept. Seizing the moment, Perseus memorized every detail. Only when he was certain he understood did he return the eye, tossing it gently to the sisters. Their complaints echoed angrily behind him as he lifted back into the skies. Though relieved, Perseus felt the weight of destiny settle deeper onto his shoulders. Knowing the path was one thing, walking it was another. He flew for days through shifting winds and distant horizons. Stars guided him at night, and the sun urged him onward during the day. The world below grew barren, the colors fading into grays and muted browns. Perseus sensed he was entering a place abandoned even by hope, where monstrous legends carved their home. At last, he reached a land of stone figures frozen in twisted poses. Warriors, animals, and even birds caught mid-flight. Their lifeless forms stood like warnings carved by terror. Perseus knew Medusa's influence had reached far beyond her lair. Each statue told a story of overconfidence, fear, or unfortunate fate. Guided by Athena's shield, he moved deeper into the wasteland, careful not to gaze at anything directly. The air itself felt thick with ancient curses. Winds whispered through broken helmets and fractured shields as if the silent army longed to speak. Perseus tightened his grip on the harp, readying his courage. Night fell as he approached the mouth of a cavern shaped like a serpent's jaw. Darkness pooled inside, cold and heavy. Perseus felt fear rising, but he refused to let it control him. This was the path he had chosen, the vow he had made. With steady breaths, he stepped into the shadows, knowing Medusa awaited in their deepest depths. The cavern swallowed Perseus in chilling darkness, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and forgotten deaths. Each step echoed like a distant warning, reminding him of the countless souls who had entered but never returned. He held Athena's shield before him, the polished surface catching faint reflections of unseen forms. Cold drafts coiled through the tunnels, carrying faint hissing sounds that tightened Perseus's grip on the harp. He knew the Gorgons slept deep within this cursed labyrinth, but Medusa alone could be slain. Her sisters were immortal, dangerous, and merciless. Disturbing them meant inviting disaster beyond even divine aid. The deeper he traveled, the more the cavern seemed to pulse with ancient energy. Strange carvings decorated the walls, twisted faces, serpents intertwined, and symbols warning intruders to turn back. Perseus wondered how many had ignored those messages, believing themselves stronger than fear, only to be transformed into lifeless stone. A soft shuffle echoed ahead, followed by a low, rhythmic hiss. Perseus froze, knowing he was close. His heartbeat pounded through his ears, threatening to drown out the sounds that guided him. He tightened his focus, relying solely on the distorted shapes reflected on the shield's surface to see what his eyes could not. Medusa lay in a hollow chamber, her form twisted yet hauntingly human. Serpents coiled from her scalp, their tongues flickering as they tasted the air. Even in sleep, her presence was overwhelming, as though the curse clung to every stone around her. Perseus steadied his breath, reminding himself he must strike with precision. He approached with cautious steps, raising the shield to angle her reflected silhouette. The bronze surface trembled slightly in his hands, mirroring the tension in his body. His mind raced through Athena's guidance. Do not look directly, strike swiftly, do not hesitate. One mistake meant eternal stillness. As he neared, Medusa stirred, sensing a presence she could not yet see. Her serpents lifted, tongues flicking in agitation. Perseus knew he could not wait any longer. Summoning all the strength within him, he swung the harp in a fluid arc, guided only by reflection and instinct sharpened by fear. The blade cut cleanly, and for a moment the cavern fell silent. Medusa's body collapsed with a dull thud, her serpents writhing wildly before growing still. Perseus exhaled shakily, barely believing he had succeeded. But the danger was far from over. Her sisters would soon awaken, and their wrath would be swift. He quickly gathered the Gorgon's head, placing it into a leather sack provided by Athena. Even covered, it radiated a chilling power, the curse still alive within its severed form. Perseus felt the weight of both victory and new responsibility settle onto his shoulders as he began retracing his steps. Before he could flee, a violent tremor shook the cavern. Steno and Euryale, Medusa's immortal sisters, roared with fury as they discovered the scene. Their cries echoed like shattering stone, vibrating through every tunnel. Perseus launched himself into the air, propelled by the winged sandals as the sisters lunged after him. Their pursuit was relentless. The immortals crashed through walls and sent showers of debris spiraling through the air. Perseus flew upward toward a narrow fissure, barely avoiding Euryale's razor-sharp claws. Rage fueled their speed, but Hermes' gift kept him just beyond their reach, weaving through collapsing passages. Bursting into the open sky, Perseus felt the cold night air fill his lungs. Yet the sisters continued their chase, shrieking with grief and vengeance. They soared after him, leaving trails of destruction across the rocky landscape. Perseus angled toward distant clouds, hoping the darkness would conceal his escape. Thunder rolled overhead as he flew into a brewing storm. Lightning illuminated the world in sudden flashes, revealing the monstrous figures pursuing him. Their eyes burned with fury, and their screams were carried on the wind. Perseus pressed onward, his muscles burning from exertion but his will unbroken. At last, the storm's fury shielded him, obscuring his form in sheets of rain. The sisters searched the skies, their roars muffled by thunder, but Perseus had vanished into the tempest. Gradually their voices faded, swallowed by the storm's relentless noise, and the young hero finally allowed himself to breathe freely. He descended beyond the storm's edge, landing on a quiet cliff overlooking the sea. Exhaustion washed over him, But he knew his journey wasn't over. Polydex still awaited proof of Perseus's promise, and the world continued to shift around him. Holding Medusa's head safely inside the sack, he prepared for the long journey home. As dawn approached, warm light spread across the coastline, painting the horizon in shades of gold and rose. Perseus sat upon the cliff's edge, reflecting on the trial he had overcome. Though fear had guided many of his steps, courage had steadied them. Yet he sensed new trials stirring ahead, shaped by fate's restless hands. He rose, strengthened by resolve, and set off once more into the open sky. The world stretched vast beneath him, rivers winding like silver threads, forests drifting in and out of the morning mist. Perseus carried both a trophy of terror and a symbol of triumph, unsure which part of it would guide his destiny next. Perseus continued his flight along the endless coastline, the sea below churning with steady rhythm. The wind hummed past his ears, carrying faint cries he could barely distinguish. As he drew closer to a distant shore, the sounds sharpened into something unmistakable. Desperation, fear, and pleading carried by the salt-tinged air. Curious and uneasy, Perseus descended toward the shoreline. Waves crashed violently against jagged rocks, and at their center stood a young woman chained to a massive cliff. Her pale garments fluttered like torn banners, and though her posture was rigid, her trembling revealed the terror she carried. Perseus's heart tightened at the sight. He approached cautiously, landing upon a rocky outcrop nearby. The woman lifted her head, surprise and disbelief flickering across her tear-stained face. Before she could speak, a distant roar rolled across the sea, echoing like thunder. Perseus felt the ground tremble slightly beneath him, as though something massive stirred beneath the waves. The woman introduced herself as Andromeda, daughter of King Perseus and Queen Cassiopeia. Her voice quivered as she explained her fate. Her mother had boasted that Andromeda's beauty surpassed even the Nereids, angering Poseidon. As punishment, a monstrous sea serpent, Cetus, was sent to ravage their land. To appease him, Andromeda was offered as sacrifice. Perseus felt anger ignite within him. The injustice of condemning a single innocent life angered him more than kings or curses. He demanded to know if her parents truly agreed to this, but Andromeda only lowered her gaze, saying they had no choice. Perseus clenched his jaw, refusing to accept such fatal inevitability. Another roar erupted, louder and closer, churning the sea into frothing chaos. Perseus turned toward the horizon, where a massive shadow slithered beneath the waves. The creature's approach sent ripples of dread through the air. Andromeda squeezed her eyes shut, whispering trembling prayers as the beast's serpentine head broke the surface. Cetus surged forward, its body towering like a living mountain of scales and ancient wrath. Water cascaded off its monstrous form as it lunged with a sound that shook the very cliffs. Perseus leapt into the sky, propelled by the winged sandals, drawing the harp with practiced precision as he prepared for battle. The beast snapped at him with jaws wide enough to crush a ship. Perseus darted aside, narrowly avoiding the collision as Cetus crashed into the rocks, sending debris scattering. He circled the creature, searching for an opening, but its hide was thick, and its movements unpredictable. Striking blindly would only bring disaster. Suddenly remembering the power he carried, Perseus reached into the sack and drew forth Medusa's head, careful to avert his gaze. Even severed, her curse radiated unrelenting force. Cetus reared back, sensing unnatural danger. But it was too late. The monstrous gaze fell upon the sea serpent, freezing its massive form in mid-roar. A violent crack echoed as the creature turned to stone, its colossal body locking in place. Waves battered the hardened figure, but it remained unmoving, an eternal monument to its defeat. Perseus slowly lowered the head back into the sack, ensuring its power harmed nothing further. The air around him grew still once more. He descended to Andromeda's side, quickly breaking the chains that bound her. She collapsed into his arms, overwhelmed by relief and disbelief. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the salty spray of the sea. Perseus gently supported her, assuring her she was safe now. Her gratitude shone brighter than the morning light. As Perseus helped her walk along the rocky shore, a group of royal guards rushed toward them, their armor glinting with urgency. Behind them followed King Perseus and Queen Cassiopeia, their expressions torn between awe and guilt. They had prepared themselves for mourning, not the miracle of their daughter's survival. Cepheus bowed deeply, thanking Perseus for the impossible. Cassiopeia, eyes swollen with grief, embraced Andromeda with trembling arms. Yet beneath their gratitude lingered shame, for they knew the hero had accomplished what they themselves had failed to protect. Perseus asked for nothing in return but rest and time for Andromeda to heal. As the kingdom celebrated her rescue, whispers began to spread through the palace. Some spoke of Perseus as a divine champion, others of destiny weaving unexpected threads. Andromeda remained close by his side, seeking comfort in the presence of the man who had risked everything to save her. Their bond grew quietly, naturally. Days passed, and the kingdom's wounds slowly began to heal. One evening, under a sky scattered with stars, Cepheus approached Perseus with sincerity. He offered Andromeda's hand in marriage, not as repayment, but in acknowledgement of the bond already forming. Andromeda's hopeful gaze made the decision easy. Their union was celebrated with joy, music, and dances that echoed into the night. Perseus felt a rare peace settle into his heart, a warmth he had not known since childhood. Yet he knew his journey was not over. Polydex still awaited him on Seriphos, unaware that Perseus returned not as a youth, but as a hero. With a final farewell to Cepheus and Cassiopeia, Perseus prepared to leave. Andromeda chose to accompany him, her courage unshaken. Together they rose into the skies, guided by the faint glow of distant stars. Though uncertainty lay ahead, Perseus felt strengthened by her presence. Whatever awaited them, they would face it united. The journey back to Seriphos carried Perseus and Andromeda across vast stretches of sea and sky. Though the winds were calm, attention clung to Perseus's thoughts. He remembered Polydex's cruel gaze, the mocking tone that had forced him into a reckless vow. Now he returned not as a desperate youth, but as one shaped by gods and trials. Andromeda sensed his unease and placed a hand on his arm, grounding him. She had heard of Polydex's reputation from the sailors and travelers they encountered. A king who hid cruelty behind silk words was often more dangerous than a monster with claws. Perseus assured her he would protect her, no matter what awaited them. When the island finally emerged on the horizon, Perseus felt memories flood back. Nights spent talking with Dictys, Danae's quiet strength, the years of peace shattered by Polydex's obsession. Yet he also felt something new. Confidence. He had defeated a Gorgon, outflown immortals, and faced a sea monster. This island no longer held power over him. They landed at the harbor, drawing curious glances from the fishermen and villagers. Many recognized Perseus, though his appearance had changed. His posture carried authority, his expression steady with resolve. Andromeda's presence only deepened the awe, her graceful demeanor contrasting with the rugged shoreline. A small crowd gathered, whispering excitedly. Some rushed forward, telling Perseus of the king's growing arrogance. Polydex had tightened his rule, punishing dissent harshly while continuing to pursue Danae. Dictys had done all he could to shield her, but the threat never faded. Perseus's jaw hardened, fury simmering beneath the surface. Without hesitation, Perseus made his way toward the palace. His steps echoed through the town square, drawing more eyes as the crowd trailed behind him. Andromeda walked at his side, her posture poised, mirroring the strength she had shown since the moment he freed her from the cliff. Together they pushed open the grand doors. Inside, Polydex lounged upon his throne, surrounded by nobles indulging in feasts and laughter. The moment Perseus appeared, silence snapped across the hall. The king's expression shifted from surprise to annoyance, as though an unwelcome memory had materialized before him. "You return empty-handed?" Polydex asked with a mocking curl of his lip. Perseus stepped forward calmly, unshaken by the king's tone. He announced that he had fulfilled his vow and returned with the promised trophy. Murmurs erupted through the hall, some disbelieving, others fearful. Polydex waved dismissively, insisting Perseus leave them to their festivities if he had nothing of value to show. The king's disdain sparked something fiery within Perseus. He reached into the leather sack and warned everyone to avert their gaze if they wished to remain flesh and blood. Some nobles scoffed, but many backed away, sensing a danger beyond mortal games. Polydex, prideful and stubborn, refused to look away. In one swift motion, Perseus lifted Medusa's head. Even shrouded in partial shadow, her petrifying power surged outward. Gasps filled the hall. Polydex froze mid-breath, his expression twisting into horror as stone crawled across his features. In heartbeats, The king transformed into a lifeless statue locked in eternal fear. The nobles who had supported him shared the same fate, their arrogance turning to dread too late. Those who obeyed Perseus's warning remained untouched, trembling but alive. The hall fell silent as Perseus lowered the head back into the sack, sealing its curse once more. Power returned to stillness around him. Andromeda stepped forward, her presence softening the atmosphere as she urged the frightened bystanders to calm. Perseus assured them the tyranny had ended. He declared that Seriphos would no longer suffer under cruelty disguised as kingship. The people listened, seeing both justice and hope reflected in his steady gaze. Dictys arrived shortly after, breathless and confused. Upon seeing Perseus, relief broke across his face. He embraced him tightly, grateful beyond words. When he learned of Polydeuces' downfall, he shook his head solemnly, knowing such fate had been inevitable. Perseus then turned to the crowd and proclaimed Dictys the new rightful king. The people erupted in agreement, for Dictys was known for his kindness and fairness. He accepted the responsibility with humility, vowing to restore peace and prosperity to the island. Danae emerged from the back of the hall, tears streaking down her cheeks as she rushed to her son. Their reunion glowed with pure relief. Perseus introduced Andromeda to his mother. Danae embraced her warmly, recognizing the courage in the young woman's eyes. The palace soon shifted from a place of tension to one of celebration. Feasts were prepared, music filled the air, and for the first time in many years, the people of Seriphos felt safe. Though surrounded by joy, Perseus's thoughts drifted toward Argos. Acrisius still lived, and the prophecy that had shaped his life remained unresolved. He did not wish harm upon the man who had cast him into the sea as an infant. Yet destiny often moved like a river, carrying souls toward outcomes they could not avoid. As the days passed, Perseus knew his time on Seriphos was drawing to a close. Danae encouraged him to pursue his own path, and Dictys assured him that the island would flourish in his absence. Andromeda remained steadfast, ready to follow wherever fate guided them next. Together, they prepared to leave the island behind. Perseus felt the desert heat tighten around him as he traveled deeper into lands where even the winds seemed afraid to wander. The memory of Medusa's lair still clung to him like a shadow, but now a new challenge lay ahead. Hermes had warned him that the Titan Atlas guarded the western edge of the world, holding the sky upon his shoulders. To reach the hidden garden of the Hesperides, Perseus had no choice but to face him. When Perseus approached the towering silhouette on the horizon, the air grew strangely still. Atlas stood like a mountain carved into the shape of a man, muscles rigid beneath the unimaginable weight. His face was fixed with stern endurance, but beneath it lay an exhaustion older than empires. Seeing the approaching hero, he exhaled a thunderous breath, scattering sand like a storm. "Leave this place," Atlas said, his voice quaking the earth. Perseus lifted his hands in peace, though his heart pounded against his ribs. "I mean no harm," he said. "I only seek the sacred garden behind your watch. My quest demands it, for I must return a gift to the gods." Atlas's eyes narrowed with ancient bitterness. "I was tricked once by a hero," he growled. "Promised freedom but given only more pain. You carry the look of one who makes demands. I will not be deceived again." Knowing persuasion would fail, Perseus reached slowly for the pouch at his side. Inside it, the silent head of Medusa rested, still carrying its terrible power. "I offer no lies," Perseus said softly. "But I can offer something else. Release." Atlas stared with confusion until Perseus drew out the head just enough for the Titan's weary eyes to fall upon it. A flash of despair crossed his face before he turned to stone, frozen forever in his last breath. The moment the transformation ended, the weight of the sky shifted onto the stony shoulders of the new mountain. The ground settled with a deep rumble, sending tremors through the desert. Perseus lowered the pouch again, shaken by the grim finality of what he had done. Yet he knew Atlas had welcomed that end. His suffering had lasted longer than mortal minds could imagine, and stone offered a peace he had never known before. With the guardian no longer standing in his path, Perseus walked toward the cliffs that hid the Hesperides garden. As he climbed, the air changed from dry heat to the scent of blooming fruit and cool mist. Golden light spilled between cracks in the stones as though the sun itself lived behind them. When he finally stepped through the opening, he found himself in a paradise of glowing trees and shimmering pools untouched by mortal time. 3 maidens stood among the branches, their robes woven from threads of dawn. The Hesperides regarded Perseus with the curiosity of immortal beings who rarely witness the arrival of mortals. "You enter a sacred place," said the eldest, her voice both gentle and distant. "Many heroes seek our treasures, but few are allowed to leave." Perseus bowed, careful not to show desperation. "I need only one gift," he answered. "A flower that grows where daylight never fades." The maidens exchanged glances, whispering thoughts too soft for human ears. The youngest stepped forward, her golden eyes bright with mischief. "A dangerous request," she said, "for the garden's gifts carry power that even gods fear." Perseus met her gaze steadily. "Then help me take only what is necessary." After a long pause, the eldest approached a tree whose leaves shone like molten gold. Reaching beneath its roots, she held out a radiant white blossom. "This flower will guide you through illusions, reveal hidden dangers, and cloak you from deceit," she said. "But it will wither if used selfishly or without purpose." Perseus accepted it with reverence, feeling warmth pulse through his fingertips. "Thank you," he whispered. The maidens watched him with unreadable expressions, as though seeing not the man before them but the ripples of fate surrounding his path. As Perseus prepared to depart, the middle sister spoke with sudden urgency. "Beware," she warned. "Your journey ahead is shadowed by powers that seek your downfall. The flower will not save you from all dangers. Trust your courage more than any gift." Perseus nodded, carrying her words with him as heavily as the weight of his task. With a final bow, he left the garden, returning to the rocky cliffs that marked its sacred boundary. Perseus descended from the cliffs with the glowing flower secured carefully against his chest. Its soft light pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating the rocky path ahead. Though the sun had begun to set beyond the distant dunes, the flower kept the shadows from gathering too closely. For the first time since leaving Seriphos, Perseus felt a strange sense of protection guiding his movements through the wilderness. But the desert did not welcome him. As night settled, the land grew eerily silent. No wind stirred the sand, no creatures whispered beneath the stones. Perseus tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, sensing an unseen presence closing around him. The flower's glow flickered, as though warning him of a coming threat. He halted, his breath shallow, listening to a stillness too deliberate to be natural. From the darkness rose a tall figure draped in a cloak darker than moonless night. His eyes gleamed with silver fire, and his footsteps made no sound upon the sand. "Perseus," the stranger greeted, his voice calm but edged with menace. "I have wandered far to find you." The hero stepped back, raising his shield defensively. "Who are you?" Perseus demanded. "A servant of those who oppose your path?" The figure smiled faintly. "I am a seeker of balance," the stranger said. "Your actions have begun to shift the fates in dangerous ways. The gods place heavy burdens on mortals, and mortals rarely bear them without breaking something." Perseus kept silent, unsure whether the visitor was friend or foe. The flower's glow dimmed at the man's nearness. "You carry a power that does not belong to you," the stranger continued. "Such power draws consequences." Perseus felt anger rise within him. "I carry what I need to survive. Nothing more?" The stranger tilted his head. "And yet you turned a titan into stone. You walk through sacred gardens. You hold gifts meant for divine hands. Do you believe fate will overlook this?" The accusation stung deeper than the desert cold. Perseus steadied himself. "If you came to threaten me, no, I will not abandon my quest." The stranger's expression softened unexpectedly. "Threaten you? No, I came to warn you." He lifted a hand, and the desert around them shimmered with strange light. For a moment, Perseus glimpsed visions of storming seas, the fall of kingdoms, and shadows rising over distant lands. "Your journey does not end with Medusa," he said. "The gods intend to shape you into something far more dangerous than you understand." Perseus felt a chill crawl across his spine as the visions faded. "Why show me this?" he whispered. "Because knowledge can prepare you," the stranger replied. "Fear can sharpen you, and choices can define you. You are walking toward a destiny that will challenge not just monsters, but the will of the gods themselves." He gestured toward the glowing flower. "Even that gift will not shield you from divine judgment." Before Perseus could respond, the stranger began to fade like smoke in the shifting air. "Remember," he said, his voice drifting into the darkness, "great heroes are often forged in pain. Guard your heart, Perseus. It may one day be all you have left." Then he vanished completely, leaving the desert silent once more. Perseus stood unmoving, shaken by the encounter and uncertain what truths the man's warning carried. The flower brightened again, restoring its warm pulse against Perseus's chest. Taking a steadying breath, he resumed his journey, pushing past the unease that clung to his thoughts. By dawn, the dunes gave way to rocky plains where jagged stones rose like broken teeth from the ground. He recognized them from Athena's earlier guidance. These were lands prowled by creatures born of forgotten myths, beings older than Olympus itself. Not long after entering the broken terrain, Perseus heard a low growl vibrating through the stones. A massive shadow leapt from behind a ridge, landing before him with a crash. The beast was unlike any he had seen, its body shaped like a lion, but its mane crackled with sparks and its eyes burned like twin embers. A chimera of ancient age, Perseus raised his shield, the flower's glow reflecting across its polished surface. The chimera's roar split the air, echoing across the jagged cliffs with a ferocity that rattled Perseus's bones. Flames burst from the creature's throat, scorching the earth in front of him. Perseus dove aside just in time, feeling the heat lick at his heels. The flower in his hand flickered, pulsing in warning. This was no ordinary monster. It carried the rage of ages long buried beneath the world. Perseus steadied himself, raising his shield as the chimera charged again. Its claws tore through stone like fabric, sparks flying with every strike. The hero countered with a swift slash of his sword, but the blade merely grazed the beast's hide. The chimera snarled, as if insulted by the attempt. Its serpent-like tail hissed, lunging forward with venom glistening from its fangs. Perseus leapt back, narrowly dodging the deadly strike. Realizing brute force would not win this battle, Perseus looked to the glowing flower for guidance. Its light sharpened, forming a faint trail across the rocky ground. Understanding the message, Perseus sprinted toward a cluster of towering stone pillars. The chimera followed, its massive form shaking the earth with every bound. Perseus ducked between the narrow pillars, weaving through the tight spaces where the creature's size became a burden. The chimera roared in frustration as its large frame scraped against the stone walls. Perseus climbed one of the pillars with swift, desperate movements. Reaching the top, he looked down at the confused beast below. The flower's glow seemed to outline weak points along the creature's mane and tail. Taking a steady breath, Perseus leapt from the pillar, driving his sword downward with all the force he could muster. His blade pierced the fiery mane, sending a burst of light erupting from the creature's body. The chimera howled in agony, twisting wildly as its flames sputtered. Perseus landed hard on the ground, rolling across the dirt. He felt pain flare in his shoulder but forced himself back to his feet. The flower dimmed, its guidance complete. Now the rest depended on his resolve. The chimera staggered, weakened but still dangerous. Its tail lashed forward, striking with desperate fury. Perseus caught the movement in time, raising his shield to deflect the blow. The force sent him stumbling backward, but he kept his grip steady. Seizing the moment, he drove his sword into the serpent tail, severing it with a sharp, decisive strike. The beast roared again, losing balance as pain overwhelmed it. With the chimera reeling, Perseus rushed forward, aiming for the exposed wound along its mane. He plunged his sword deeper, twisting it until the creature's flames extinguished entirely. The monster collapsed, shaking the earth one final time before falling still. Perseus stepped back, panting heavily, sweat dripping from his brow. The battlefield was silent save for his labored breathing and the distant hum of wind against stone. Though victorious, Perseus felt no triumph, only exhaustion and the growing weight of destiny pressing upon him. He wiped soot from his face and retrieved the glowing flower, which now shone softly, as if acknowledging the difficulty of the battle. "Thank you," he whispered to it, though he doubted it understood. Still, its light seemed warmer now, like a quiet reassurance. He continued forward, weaving between the towering rocks until the landscape opened to reveal a narrow canyon. The walls shimmered with faint markings, symbols carved by hands older than the gods. Perseus traced them with his fingers, feeling a strange pulse behind the stone. The air grew colder, filled with whispers that brushed against his thoughts. The canyon carried an ancient presence, mysterious and watchful. As he moved deeper, the whispers strengthened, forming soft echoes of voices long lost. The flower dimmed, sensing the unnatural energy swirling through the canyon. Perseus gripped its stem tighter, knowing this place was not meant for mortals. A faint figure appeared ahead, a silhouette drifting like smoke. Perseus froze, heart pounding, unsure whether he faced a spirit, a memory, or something far more dangerous. The drifting silhouette solidified as Perseus approached, revealing the form of a woman robed in shimmering gray. Her face was soft and sorrowful, her eyes reflecting centuries of forgotten memories. She hovered inches above the ground, untouched by mortal weight. "Turn back, traveler," she whispered, her voice thin as mist. These paths were carved for the dead, not the living. But Perseus stood his ground, refusing to retreat. "I cannot turn back," he said, keeping his grip firm on the glowing flower. "My journey demands I cross these lands." The spirit regarded him with a pained expression. "Many heroes have spoken those words," she murmured, "and many now wander these canyons with hollow eyes, trapped between realms." Her warning carried a chilling truth, but Perseus stepped closer, bowing his head respectfully. "Guide me," he asked, "or at least do not hinder me." The spirit drifted back, her translucent form shimmering like moonlit water. "I can neither guide nor stand against you," she said, "but I can show you what awaits if you continue blindly." She raised her hand, and the canyon walls ignited with images, ghostly visions swirling like smoke. Perseus saw warriors shouting in fury, kings crumbling beneath the weight of their crowns, and beasts with too many eyes watching from the shadows. The visions shifted, revealing a woman bound in chains of shimmering fire. Her face was fierce yet sorrowful, her hair wild like storm winds. She stood atop a jagged cliff surrounded by monstrous sea waves. "Who is she?" Perseus whispered. The spirit sighed. "She is Andromeda, daughter of a proud kingdom. She is the storm waiting at the end of your path. Her fate twists with yours, though neither of you yet knows why." Perseus felt a sharp jolt in his chest, as though destiny had reached out to tug at him. The image of the chained woman burned into his thoughts. "What threatens her?" he asked. The vision answered before the spirit could speak. Massive claws erupting from the sea, a monstrous shadow rising with glowing eyes and scales that shimmered like a nightmare. A sea demon, ancient and merciless, prepared to devour her whole. The spirit lowered her hand, and the visions dissolved into floating dust. "She awaits her doom far from here," she whispered, "and your path will cross hers when the stars decree." Perseus nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of destiny tightening around him. "Then I have no choice but to keep moving," he said. The spirit watched him, sorrow deepening in her expression. "You walk toward both glory and heartbreak." With a final whisper, the spirit faded into the canyon's shadows, leaving Perseus alone once more. The flower's glow brightened as if urging him onward. He pressed forward, following the winding path that carved through towering walls of stone. The ground hummed beneath his feet, carrying faint tremors of unseen forces shifting in the depths below. Each step felt heavier, burdened by the visions he had witnessed. At last the canyon widened, revealing a vast open plain covered in silver grass that shimmered beneath the night sky. Perseus stepped onto the field cautiously. The air was cool and quiet, but something unseen stirred beneath the surface. The flower flickered, sending a pulse of warning. A sudden rumble vibrated through the ground, and the silver grass parted as a colossal figure rose from the earth like a living mountain. The creature towered above him, its body forged of soil, roots, and ancient stone. Glowing blue veins pulsed across its form, like rivers of trapped lightning. It had no face, only a deep hollow where its features should have been. Yet Perseus felt its attention settle on him with immense pressure. The Earth Guardian, one of the silent watchers of forgotten realms, stood blocking his path, unmoving but not passive. Perseus approached slowly, raising a hand in peace. "I seek passage," he said. "I disturb nothing that belongs to your domain." The Guardian's hollow center glowed brighter, its energy rippling outward in a wave that shook the plain. The flower burned with a sudden brilliance in response, shielding Perseus from the force. As the light faded, the Guardian stepped aside with thunderous weight, granting him the path forward without a single spoken word. Perseus crossed the silver plain with the Guardian's distant tremors echoing behind him. Each step carried him closer to lands shaped by storms and ancient tides. The air grew heavy with moisture, thick enough to taste. Soon the gentle whisper of grass gave way to the sound of crashing waves. Ahead, moonlight gleamed off a vast shoreline where the sea churned with restless fury. As Perseus approached the coast, he noticed jagged cliffs rising like colossal blades along the water's edge. The ocean below thundered against the stone, sending bursts of white spray high into the air. The flower glowed fiercely, warning him of unseen danger in the winds. Perseus tightened his grip on his sword, knowing the sea was a place where ancient monsters still roamed freely beneath the waves. Following the shoreline, he discovered a narrow path winding upward along the cliffside. The climb was steep, the rocks slick with salt and mist. Halfway up, he paused, catching his breath. From this height, he could see far across the water, a vast shimmering expanse stretching endlessly beneath the night sky. Yet beneath its calm surface, he sensed a presence stirring, something immense and patient lurking below. Reaching the top, he found a wide plateau overlooking the sea. Strange stone pillars stood in a circle at its center, carved with symbols that pulsed faintly like beating hearts. As Perseus drew closer, he felt the ancient magic radiating from them. The flowers' glow harmonized with the stones, creating a soft, resonant hum in the air. A place of power, he realized, one untouched by mortal hands for countless ages. Without warning, a fierce gust of wind swept across the plateau, swirling into a spiraling vortex of salt and mist. Perseus shielded his eyes as a figure emerged from the storm. She wore armor shaped like flowing water, her hair whipping around her like a cascade. Her gaze was piercing, sharp as a crashing wave. "Perseus," she said, voice ringing with authority. "I am Helena, warden of the tides." Perseus bowed cautiously, unsure whether she stood as ally or adversary. "What brings you here?" he asked. Helena studied him with measured intensity. "The sea speaks of your coming," she replied. "Its whispers carry both hope and ruin. You walk toward a fate bound tightly with the waters." Perseus straightened, feeling destiny coil once again around him. "I seek only to complete my quest," he said. Helena stepped closer, the air rippling with blue light around her. "Then hear this warning," she said. "The creature you will soon face cannot be slain by steel alone. Its spirit is tied to storm and sea, born from ancient vengeance. The flower you carry will shield you from its illusions, but not from its wrath." Perseus nodded slowly. "How can it be defeated?" he asked. Helena's eyes darkened. "You must strike at its heart," she answered. "A heart hidden deep beneath cursed scales. But to reach it, you must confront the storm not with fear, but with resolve." She extended a shimmering orb of water toward him. Inside it, a swirling blue spark pulsed like a trapped star. "Take this," she said, "a shard of the sea's blessing. It may grant you one moment of clarity amid the chaos." Perseus accepted the orb, feeling its cool power seep into his palm. The flower dimmed briefly, acknowledging the new force beside it. Helena stepped back, her form dimming like a fading wave. "Go now," she said solemnly. "The tides are shifting, and the one you seek draws near. Fate has already begun its approach." With a final surge of wind, she vanished into the mist. Left alone on the plateau, Perseus gazed out over the dark sea. Thunder rumbled across the horizon, and distant lightning flickered like the beat of a monstrous heart. He took a steady breath, feeling both the weight of destiny and the strength gathering within him. With the glowing flower in one hand and the orb in the other, he turned toward the path leading down to the next chapter of his fate. Perseus descended the cliffs carefully, the sound of crashing waves growing louder with each step. The sea below boiled as though alive, shadows moving beneath the dark surface. Even from a distance, he could sense the enormous creature stirring, its power older than any mortal tale. The wind carried a tang of salt and menace, warning him that the storm itself was about to strike. As he reached the shoreline, the water erupted in a towering wall, lightning flashing across the turbulent waves. From the depths rose the sea monster, its scales shimmering like obsidian and its eyes glowing with molten fury. Its roar reverberated against the cliffs, sending shivers down Perseus's spine. The flower in his hand pulsed urgently, warning him of both danger and the path ahead. The monster's tentacles lashed outward, crashing against the jagged rocks with destructive force. Perseus leapt backward, narrowly avoiding the crushing blow. He gripped the orb of water Helena had given him, feeling its pulsing energy ready to respond. The flower's light mingled with the orb's glow, casting a protective aura around him as the first tidal waves surged toward the shore. Perseus knew brute strength alone would not defeat the creature. Its movements were unpredictable, its body nearly indestructible. He recalled Helena's warning, "Strike at the heart." but the heart was hidden beneath layers of cursed scales and violent storm energy. Perseus focused on the pulsing glow within the orb, letting it guide him toward the one vulnerability he had been warned about. The monster bellowed and surged forward, sending torrents of water cascading across the rocks. Perseus held his ground, raising his shield to deflect the brunt of the assault. He could feel the tide attempting to overwhelm him, but the orb's energy created a bubble of clarity amidst the chaos. Every wave, every roar, became decipherable, a pattern emerging from the chaos of the storm. Perseus moved with purpose, dodging a massive tail sweep and climbing atop a jagged rock pillar. From this vantage, he glimpsed the heart hidden beneath the stormy waves, glowing faintly in rhythm with the orb. He could almost feel the creature's awareness sensing him, the tension between predator and hero rising like a living current. This was the moment Thelena had prepared him for. The flower pulsed brightly in his hand, its glow steady despite the wind and rain. Perseus leapt toward the monster's exposed heart, slicing through smaller limbs that blocked his path. Sparks of magic and energy erupted with every touch, the orb amplifying his strikes. The creature shrieked, a sound that shook the cliffs and drowned out the thunder. But Perseus pushed onward, driven by both courage and destiny. Finally, he reached the heart, a pulsating core of storm and sea energy bound within thick, cursed scales. With a roar of determination, Perseus plunged his sword deep into the glowing center. The orb flared brightly, channeling its energy through his strike. Lightning lanced through the sky, and the monster's roar faltered, its massive body convulsing violently before finally collapsing into the ocean depths. Silence fell over the shoreline, broken only by the gentle lapping of now calm waves. Perseus sank to one knee, exhausted but alive. The flower's light dimmed softly, acknowledging the completion of its guidance. The orb's energy dissolved into the air like mist, leaving him alone with the soft sound of the sea. Victory had been won, but the weight of destiny still pressed heavily upon him. Perseus looked out over the horizon, the moonlight reflecting off the now calm sea. He knew that though the monster had fallen, more trials awaited him, shaped by both fate and the god's unseen hands. Andromeda's face appeared in his thoughts, her safety secured for now, yet her destiny intertwined with his in ways he had yet to understand. Taking a steady breath, he began the long journey onward, toward the next chapter of his hero's path. Perseus traveled inland after the sea battle, the taste of salt still lingering on his lips. His thoughts were consumed by Andromeda and the promise of reuniting with her. Every step brought a mix of relief and anticipation. The flower's glow, now soft and steady, reminded him that guidance had carried him this far, and perhaps it would continue to light the path to her. As he crested a hill, he glimpsed a figure in the distance. At first, he thought it was the wind playing tricks, but the shape solidified, a woman with long flowing hair, standing tall against the fading sunlight. His heart leapt. It was Andromeda. Her gaze met his, and for a moment, the hardships of his journey seemed to fade away, replaced by the warmth of reunion and the promise of hope. Andromeda ran toward him, her chains long since removed but the memory of her ordeal still in her eyes. Perseus knelt, opening his arms, and she leapt into them. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with sweat and dust from the journey. He held her tightly, feeling the pulse of life and resilience in her embrace. Words were unnecessary. Their relief and joy spoke louder than any voice could. After a moment, Perseus gently set Andromeda on the ground. "You are safe now," he whispered. She nodded, her breath coming in soft gasps. They looked out over the landscape together, the ruins of the battlefield behind them and the soft glow of twilight ahead. The weight of the recent trials hung in the air, but the shared sense of survival and mutual courage created a bond neither could break. They walked together through rolling hills, sharing quiet conversation. Perseus recounted the battles he had faced, the Gorgon, the sea monster, the Chimera, the trials of destiny. Andromeda listened, her eyes wide with awe and concern. She asked about his encounters with spirits and guardians, and Perseus spoke honestly, even of the warnings that had chilled him to the bone. Through it all, her presence was a balm to his weary spirit. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Perseus and Andromeda found shelter for the night near a small stream. They sat together, their hands intertwined, sharing warmth in the cool evening. Perseus felt a deep sense of peace. The long and dangerous path had not broken him. It had prepared him for moments like this, moments of quiet triumph and human connection. In the calm of the night, Andromeda spoke softly. "I feared I would never see you again," she admitted. Perseus brushed hair from her face, smiling gently. "I promised I would find you. Nothing, not even fate or monsters, could keep me from you." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if the gods themselves acknowledged the reunion of two hearts bound by courage and destiny. Morning came, and with it a renewed sense of purpose. Perseus knew that their journey together was only beginning. They would travel back toward kingdoms and lands that had been shaped by their absence. Along the way, Perseus would confront lingering threats, and Andromeda's strength would prove essential. Together, they formed a partnership of skill, courage, and trust, ready to face whatever the gods or fate had in store. As they traveled, news of Perseus's victories spread like wildfire. Villages and towns along the way hailed him as a hero, and the story of Andromeda's rescue inspired courage in the hearts of many. Perseus remained humble, focusing on the task ahead rather than the adulation. He knew the greatest dangers still lurked on the horizon, but with Andromeda by his side, he felt a renewed confidence that nothing could deter him. By the time they reached the edge of a forest leading toward Seriphos, Perseus took a moment to reflect. The battles, the trials, the warnings, and the gifts had all brought him here, to a reunion that symbolized not just survival, but victory over the forces that sought to control him. Andromeda squeezed his hand, sensing his thoughts, and together they stepped into the forest, ready to face the next chapter of their intertwined destinies. Perseus and Andromeda journeyed across rolling hills and winding roads, their destination Seriphos growing ever nearer. The flower in Perseus's hand glowed softly, marking the path as if celebrating their survival and guiding them through the wilds. The air carried the scent of salt and earth, a familiar reminder of home. Yet the shadow of past threats lingered in Perseus's mind. As the familiar shoreline came into view, Perseus's memories returned. The harsh gaze of Polydex, the treacherous halls of the palace, and the countless nights of fear and waiting. Dictys had remained a steadfast protector, but Perseus knew his mother Danae's safety had always been precarious. Now, armed with courage, wisdom, and the strength gained from his adventures, he felt ready to reclaim his homeland. Upon reaching the town, the townsfolk gathered once more, their faces a mixture of awe and hope. Stories of Perseus's victories had spread far and wide, and whispers of the Gorgon, the sea monster, and the Chimera filled every corner. Children peered shyly, imagining the hero who had returned from death and darkness. Perseus smiled gently, acknowledging them with a nod, but his focus remained on the palace ahead. Dictys emerged from the shadows of the harbor, rushing forward with tears of relief. "You've returned safely," he exclaimed, embracing Perseus. The hero felt the weight of gratitude and responsibility pressing upon him. "Yes," he said quietly, "but we must ensure the island is truly free from the tyranny that once threatened it." Dictys nodded, his eyes reflecting years of unspoken fears finally released. The palace loomed ahead, grand but now empty of true authority. Perseus's steps were deliberate as he entered the hall, Andromeda at his side. The silence of the space was heavy, broken only by the echoes of their footsteps. Memories of Polydex's arrogance resurfaced, fueling a quiet anger within Perseus. Yet he restrained himself, knowing that wisdom now mattered more than vengeance. Perseus approached the throne, now empty of Polydex, his stone fate sealed from previous encounters. The nobles who had once cowered before tyranny now watched in awe, unsure of how to respond to the hero's return. Perseus addressed them calmly, speaking of justice and fairness, urging them to uphold a new order built on respect and courage rather than fear. The hall seemed to breathe with renewed hope. Dictys stepped forward, bowing to Perseus. "You have my support," he said. "Seriphos will follow your guidance." Perseus smiled, feeling a deep sense of closure. He knew that leadership required humility, and he entrusted the island to Dictys, confident in his loyalty and wisdom. The people cheered softly, their voices mingling with the gentle breeze flowing through the open hall, a sign of peace finally restored. Andromeda turned to Perseus, her eyes shining with pride. "You've faced more than any mortal should," she said. And yet, here you stand, ready to protect those you love. Perseus took her hand, feeling the strength and courage that their shared journey had fostered. Together, they walked the palace grounds, surveying the island that would now flourish in freedom, love, and the promise of safety. Perseus and Andromeda spent the next days ensuring the townspeople's welfare, repairing structures and easing tensions left by Polydectes' reign. The flower, once a guiding light through peril, now symbolized hope and restoration. Each action reinforced the bond between Perseus and the people, bridging the gap between hero and protector, mortal and divine guidance intertwined in harmony. At last, Perseus and Andromeda stood atop the cliffs overlooking the sea, the breeze carrying stories of courage across the horizon. Perseus reflected on the journey, the battles fought, the monsters conquered, the warnings and prophecies, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Andromeda leaned on him, their hearts aligned in understanding. Destiny had tested them both, and together, they had emerged stronger and wiser. Perseus's thoughts returned to the prophecy that had long hung over his life, the warning that he might unwittingly cause the death of King Acrisius. Though far from Seriphos, the shadow of fate loomed. Perseus knew that heroes could never fully escape destiny, and that wisdom meant confronting prophecy, not fleeing it. His resolve strengthened, tempered by experience and the lessons of every trial. Andromeda noticed his distant gaze and asked softly, "What weighs so heavily on your mind?" Perseus took her hand, a small smile breaking through his solemn expression. "There is a fate I must face, one written long before my birth. The gods have woven it into my life. I will meet it with courage, as I have met every challenge." Andromeda nodded, understanding the quiet strength and burden of a hero's path. The journey to the distant land of Argos was long and reflective. Along the way, Perseus recounted his adventures to Andromeda, not to boast, but to process the lessons etched into every encounter. Each challenge, from Medusa to the sea monster, had shaped his mind, body, and spirit. Andromeda listened, her faith in him unwavering, providing both comfort and grounding amidst the weight of fate. When they reached Argos, Perseus sought out King Acrisius, whose kingdom brimmed with cautious respect for the hero's renown. Acrisius, now aged and wary, greeted him with both reverence and apprehension. Perseus bowed respectfully. "I come not for vengeance, but to fulfill what must be done with honor," he said. Acrisius's eyes betrayed fear and resignation. He had long known prophecy's shadow. Perseus explained the events of his journey, the monsters defeated, and the wisdom gained. Acrisius listened silently, tension tightening his shoulders. The prophecy lingered between them like a living presence. Perseus's tone remained gentle but firm. "Fate is not cruelty, father," he said. "It is a path to honor, shaped by courage. I will ensure that the prophecy's weight falls with dignity and minimal harm." Acrisius nodded, accepting the inevitable with grace. "Then let it be done with awareness," he murmured. The two men approached the arena where the prophecy had been foretold to unfold. It was a festival of sports, an event filled with joy and competition. Yet Perseus moved with measured caution. Every step reminded him of the delicate balance between destiny and choice, between action and consequence. The fateful moment arrived unexpectedly. In a casual athletic contest, Perseus threw a discus with skill and precision. The discus veered unpredictably, striking Acrisius and ending the king's life instantly. There was no malice, no intent beyond the act itself. Perseus dropped to his knees, grief and relief mingling in equal measure. Fate had been fulfilled, yet in the gentlest possible way, honoring both prophecy and morality. Andromeda held him as he mourned, her presence steadying him. "It was inevitable," she whispered, "and you carried it with honor." Perseus reflected on the paradox of destiny. Some events cannot be avoided, but courage and virtue shape how they unfold. His journey had not been merely about monsters and battles. It had been preparation for the ultimate understanding of responsibility, sacrifice, and human strength. With the prophecy fulfilled, Perseus turned his attention to rebuilding and protecting. He established bonds of alliance, ensuring the continuity of peace in lands he had visited. His victories and wisdom spread as stories, not of terror, but of courage, loyalty, and heroism tempered by compassion. Andromeda, always at his side, became both partner and symbol of hope, reminding all that bravery and love could coexist even amid great trials. Standing on a cliff overlooking the sea that had tested him so many times, Perseus gazed toward the horizon. Every challenge, from Medusa to the monsters of the sea, from prophecy to reunion, had led him here. The flower, now a soft, fading light, symbolized guidance and growth, while Andromeda's hand in his reminded him of love and shared destiny. Perseus breathed deeply, ready for whatever life and the gods might bring next. Perseus and Andromeda returned to Seriphos, now a land thriving under peace and justice. Villagers greeted them with admiration, yet Perseus remained humble, knowing that true heroism was not measured by tales or glory, but by the protection and guidance offered to those in need. The island, once shadowed by fear, now reflected the light of courage and wisdom. Perseus visited Danae, embracing his mother with tears and relief. Years of fear and separation melted in that single moment. He recounted every challenge, every victory, ensuring she understood that her prayers and endurance had guided him through impossible trials. Danae's eyes shone with pride. Her son had become a hero shaped by both destiny and virtue. He and Andromeda worked to heal the scars left by tyranny. Roads were repaired, homes restored, and tales of kindness and justice replaced the memory of oppression. Perseus taught courage through example, sharing not just stories of monsters, but the lessons learned, that strength without wisdom leads to ruin, and bravery without compassion is hollow. The island flourished under their care. Word of Perseus's deeds traveled across lands and seas, reaching even distant kingdoms. He was celebrated not just for slaying monsters, but for his measured courage, humility, and wisdom. Scholars chronicled his journey, minstrels sang of his trials, and travelers spoke of his compassion. Perseus's legend grew, yet he remained grounded, aware that every victory was built upon discipline, allies, and moral clarity. The flower, once a guide through darkness, was placed carefully on the altar of Athena in Seriphos. Its light remained soft but eternal, symbolizing both protection and enlightenment. Perseus bowed before it, silently acknowledging the forces, divine and natural, that had aided him. It was a quiet moment, a reminder that heroes often rely on more than their own strength to navigate the challenges of fate. Andromeda, by his side, became a partner in both governance and adventure. Together they guided Seriphos with balance, blending wisdom with compassion. Their bond, forged through peril and adversity, exemplified the harmony between courage and love. Citizens looked to them not merely as rulers, but as symbols of hope, a reminder that even in the face of divine destiny, humans could shape their path through integrity and choice. Perseus often reflected on the monsters he had faced: Medusa, the chimera, the sea serpent, the trials of spirits and gods. Each encounter had tested a different part of his being: strength, courage, wisdom, and morality. In facing them, he had discovered that true heroism required more than physical prowess. It demanded empathy, judgment, and the ability to act rightly even when fate loomed large. Years passed, and Perseus's story became part of the living memory of the world. Children played near the cliffs where he had fought sea monsters, dreaming of courage. Travelers recounted his journeys, emphasizing the importance of virtue over mere conquest. Perseus himself grew quieter with age, but his deeds continued to inspire, a lasting legacy bridging mortal effort and divine will. In quiet moments, Perseus would walk along the shores, Andromeda at his side. They watched sunsets paint the sky in gold and crimson, reflecting on trials overcome and lives saved. The hero who had once been driven by prophecy and peril now walked with peace, aware that every act of courage, every choice guided by virtue, had led to this serene balance between destiny and free will. And so, the story of Perseus came full circle, from a young man facing impossible odds, through battles with monsters and encounters with gods, to a hero who understood the true meaning of courage, love, and responsibility. His legacy endured not in fear, but in hope. The name Perseus became a symbol that through courage, wisdom, and compassion, one could shape destiny and leave a mark upon the world forever.